Right, the IEC is set to release the final results of this year's elections this evening at 6 o'clock. The provisional results show that coalition governments will be the order of the day after political parties battled to score outright majorities in many of the wards and significant metros. Our eNCA team, Sally Burdett, Shahan Ramkissoon and host of Power to Truth, Tabane, are on standby at the National Results Centre in Pretoria. Let's take you there now. Shahan and Sally, I'm sure it's so busy, much busier than it was with me this morning at the National Rock. We always know that political parties are there on that floor waiting to see exactly what the IEC will announce.
Yeah, it's going to be very exciting. Thank you so much, Masero. And yes, we're all waiting for 6 o'clock, and in the last 15 minutes, just that noise and bubble from the floor has started to increase. The security sweep has been done. We were all kicked out into the hot Pretoria sun for an hour, but we're back. Everything's safe and secure to go because, of course, the president's going to be here tonight.
Yeah, definitely. And final touches, I guess, to the results, Sally, because we're seeing it's just over 99%, but not 100 yet. They haven't officially released that. And then we heard the drums a bit earlier as well, because everything has to be perfect. It's been, what, weeks of hard work for the political parties. There was lots of uncertainty about this election because it eventually went to the Constitutional Court. But now we're here. And now we're talking about election results for 2021.
I mean, it's astonishing. As the politicians kept saying, we pulled our campaigns together in 42 days, I think it was. And normally it would be a run-up of absolutely months. So it has been an extraordinary effort on the part of the IEC, not without problems, of course. And we're seeing that challenge today. The NFP wants a recount in the KwaZulu-Natal Council of Ndumbe. And they were lodging papers, I think, just this afternoon. So hopefully we'll find someone from the NFP and get the very latest news from them. And some of the smaller parties also we saw yesterday in the Western Cape, they say they're alleging vote rigging. But as the IEC says, there's a very clear process to follow if you have any concerns. But you're right, let's have a look at the big picture with 99 point something of the votes in. So, of course, the ANC, for the first time in its history, has dropped below 50%. But it is still the lead party, 45%. And a few bits and bobs. I'm not going to go into those bits after the point because it's just too many numbers. But if you compare that to 2016, they got 53%, which was also low, coming off highs that they were used to. The DA also has dropped, of course. In 2016, they had 26% of the vote, and this time around, they've got 21% of the vote. And in the top three, the EFF is the only party that has grown support, going from 8% of the national local votes, if that makes any sense at all. National local votes? Yes, it does. Going from 8% in 2016 up to 10% now. They're pretty happy with what they've done, bearing in mind we had a really low voter turnout. And we are actually, am I correct, or perhaps I've missed something on the drive to Pretoria, but we haven't got the full final detail on exactly what voter turnout was. I mean, I think we've worked it out to about 45%.
Yeah, exactly. So it was, 12.1 million, and that's what they said was, and they did admit, the IEC eventually did admit that it was low voter turnout because they never wanted to say that. But there's so many ways that politicians are trying to spin this to us. Some of them are saying it's the pandemic, voter apathy. Some are saying that, nobody trusted anyone on the ballot paper. So you talk to so many people, but you hear different stories about this. I guess we actually, as a news organization, need to go to the streets again and speak to South Africans who didn't vote, because we heard from those who did vote over the past couple of days, right? But it will be really good for us to go and speak to South Africans about why they didn't vote, because some of them were actually at parties on Monday because it was a public holiday.
To our shame, South Africa.
So, yeah, they would rather have a drink and a braai than go and vote, which is very sad. But that's something we have to do. One party, Sal, that you didn't mention that's seen a growth, and that's the IFP.
Yes.
It's done really well. If you look at the national picture, it has 5.7% as things stand. But in 2016, it had 4.25%. Made lots of inroads in KwaZulu-Natal. In areas that normally went to the ANC, they have now managed to gain control of those wards.
And the thing about the IFP, it's a smaller party, but they have a lot of experience in coalitions. And that's going to come in pretty handy because we have 69 hung councils.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But we have lots for you up until 6 o'clock. That's when the IEC, of course, will be officially announcing the results. I think at 6:45, we're going to hear from the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, as well about the elections. But Slindelo Masikane is on the floor for us. She's been here over the past couple of days talking to politicians. The moment's here, Slee. What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
Well, today is quite a historic day. It's been a historic election for our democracy, the first of its kind. An election held in a pandemic. South Africa joins over 100 countries that were able to conduct elections in this unprecedented period. And today what we're going to see, of course, is the official release of the results. It's been sleepless nights for us journalists, the media, the IEC, political parties, and South Africans as a whole. Those who really did participate, who went out to vote today, we finally get those official results in terms of what communities, what areas and other wards want to see happen, who they want to see govern. You know, we are seeing interesting numbers coming out of those metros, but of course we're getting those official results. I'm on the floor, and as you can see, it's hoppers full, so guests are starting to arrive. We are expecting, of course, an address by the President, the official program starting at around 6 o'clock this evening. We're going to have the national anthem, of course, sung, remarks by the CEO, Mr. Simon Mabolo from the IEC, then a keynote address as well by the chairperson of the Commission, Glenn Mashinini. I'm going to ask my colleague to just give you a picture, just here in the front, in front of the leaderboards. You can see IEC officials, you know, last minute touches, getting those technical glitches sorted out before we go into the main event. We also know we're going to have a pyrotechnic display, and I think this is where we're going to see the release of those results on the big screens, and then we will have closing remarks rather by the Commissioner Janet Love at the end of the program. So it's quite an exciting period. It's still quite empty right now on the floor, but as soon as guests start coming in, we will certainly be grabbing them to get their thoughts. We're expecting members from Chapter 9 institutions, diplomats that have been observing the elections, and of course government officials and the political parties themselves.
It's amazing to see, Slee, how that floor has now been translated into a much more sophisticated arena. We're used to those 3 screens behind you showing different versions of maps, and it's normally sort of fairly plain lighting, and it's already looking fairly festive. But of course, when we look behind this moment of celebration, because I think every election, every free election is a celebration, we have to remember there's probably a lot of hard work going on because of all those hung councils. Among them, of course, are 5 metros that are hung. And that is where some serious horse trading has already begun. It's been so interesting, and Slee, I know you've spoken to a lot of the political parties, what they're saying and what they're not saying about who they're talking to, who they're going to talk to. What has struck you about this era of coalitions that we're moving into even more than 2016?
It's really quite interesting, Sally, what we're seeing unfolding in terms of the results that we know of right now, of what communities have want. They want coalitions. It seems that they don't want a singular party anymore to be ruling in their different areas and wards. And, you know, I've really tried to gauge with the political parties as to who are they talking to, you know, what is the sense on the ground and within these talks. But, you know, they're keeping mum. We know that many of the discussions are going to be taking place over this weekend because there is a time limit. They don't have a lot of time in terms of these discussions. They need to finalize these agreements. And we know from political parties like the Democratic Alliance that's made a commitment to make these coalition agreements public so that voters know exactly what's been signed and sealed and what is the give and take between the political parties.
Yeah, Sally, we're going to come back to you in a moment. Let's go to JJ Tabane. JJ, Sally was talking to Sally about the hung metros, and of course, eThekwini is what everyone's talking about because no one really believed, in the lead up to this, that the ANC will actually lose full control. Some people thought it was going to happen, like Lukhona Mguni, one of our election analysts, but we're now seeing it happen, and it is a stronghold for the ANC generally.
Well, it's afternoon to you, Shahan and Sally. Obviously, it's a bloodbath for the ANC, and no spin, no amount of spin can take that away. You're talking a ruling party that is below 50, not just by a margin or two, but by almost 5 percentage points. So it's a bloodbath, and of course, it's an accumulation of the bloodbath across the metros, where the ANC, for example, in Joburg is only at 36, so it's going to be at the mercy of other parties to govern. Same in Tshwane, it's going to be at the mercy. And KwaZulu-Natal, I think, or Tabane, or eThekwini in particular, deservedly so. We've seen a situation where millions of monies have been stolen by ANC leaders there. There's instability. People have been replaced. The mayor there, over the last 6 years, they've had at least 3 mayors. It's been a mess, but not as messy as all the other coalitions like Gqeberha and Tshwane in particular. But I think this is a voice of the people. I think we did not beat about the bush about this. It's a voice of the people who are truly fed up. It's only unfortunate that those people did not express their votes to someone else to govern the way they want, but they chose to stay at home, and they can give as many excuses as you like about apathy and so on. But at the heart of it is that people are fed up. But I'm not a scientist. I'm standing with a political scientist, top political scientist, and our commentator here, Lukhona Mnguni, who's going to tell me what he thinks. Lukhona, what do you think overall? Can you give me, in a punchy way, what you think of what this election means for our democratic project?
Well, we talk about democratic or democracy consolidation. This is exactly it. Any democracy worth its salt is best tested when power changes hands, when people are able to make their choices without intimidation, when the outcomes are also respected. We are not seeing a temperature, at least at this moment, that suggests anybody is interested in challenging these outcomes. In fact, it was yesterday the ANC coming out saying they believe the elections were peaceful, free and fair. The EFF has come out today lauding the work of the IEC despite all the challenges that...
Celebrated that the ANC has lost.
Absolutely. Musi was very happy that I bumped into him. Yeah, I've never seen Musi that happy. I think since he left the DA, his happiness index has increased. But I mean, look, JJ, as you are saying in your opening, the people have spoken, and that must be respected. And if you look across the world, people do sometimes speak only in the form of hung parliaments, hung councils, and in some jurisdictions there has never been...
Or boycott.
Or boycott. So, I mean, people have a lot of agency, and they find alternative political, participation mechanisms. And of course, we know protests are part of those mechanisms, but we are also seeing some civil society groupings that are advocating and are able to press for certain changes to the government. But this now is going to be fundamental in one way. Politicians who never thought that they would have to talk to each other and beg each other for cooperation. So it might actually pull tolerance levels much closer in terms of working. But the politicians would have to be smart in how they go about it so that they are not swallowed or diluted by the other.
In terms of the citizen, where does this leave the citizen? The politicians are going to cut the deal for themselves so that in a sense, the vote doesn't matter. So they lose their jobs because they were not delivering. They found new friends to keep their patronage going. What does this mean for the citizen?
So yes, in some instances that will be the case, but in a number of them we will get to see new administrations. But what it says for the citizens is that follow your vote, be vigilant. This is just the beginning. The accountability work, the advocacy work, the monitoring work. And because this is local government, JJ, we actually have such beautiful instruments in the Structures Act, in the Systems Act, in the Public Services Act, in terms of how we can actually hold these institutions to account. Of course, you know at some point what committees will be up for election as per the Municipal Structures Act. Citizens now need to be vigilant there to make sure that they are also robustly engaged in the business of municipalities. So I think for citizens, this is a new and long journey for them, because for some it was a distant thing. Ebai, it's very distant when you are in eThekwini. But now suddenly the coalition is in eThekwini. So what do you do as a resident in the city of eThekwini to make sure that the coalition doesn't become chaotic or collapses as you have seen in the other metropolitans?
All right, just finally, before I go back to Sally and Shahan there, quickly, what are you hearing? Joburg, Tshwane, what can you expect? What can you put your neck on?
I'm not going to put my neck on the block in terms of who will cooperate. I think the guys in the city of Joburg, though, as much as they may discredit Herman Mashaba in terms of its politicking, I think they are also aware that he's probably the only one who held them nicely there as a steady ship. And they made some good gains. The EFF can claim to have influenced policy in the city of Joburg because they had a leader who was not alienating. But I think, JJ, the biggest consideration here is between the DA and the ANC. Does working together help consolidate very stable local institutions but risk their outcomes in 2024? That's the biggest question of the coalitions. Mathematically, for stability, two parties working together across the land is better than coordinating multiple variant coalitions. But they've got to be very careful what that will mean for their prospects in 2024, especially for the ANC that's going to go to Congress. And of course, the DA at some point will also go to a federal Congress.
Top political scientist, talk show host, Lukhona Mnguni, talking to us here on the floor of the Rock. I'll go back to you, Sally and Shahan, to carry on with the broadcast.
Thank you very much, JJ, Tabane.